Welcome to Roll, Ponder, and Play, a podcast dedicated to crafting stories through the application of role-playing game engines, combined with creative thinking and propelled into the ether by the barest of prompts. I'm Jared Hess, taking on all the roles of Game Master, Solo Player, Author, and Narrator. Come with me on a journey, and together let us explore realms of shadow, danger, and wonder. One role can decide the fate of many things. Welcome to episode 10 of the Queen of Shadows podcast on Roll, Ponder, and Play. I'm Jared Hess, your friendly neighborhood game master, solo player, author, and narrator. In our previous episode, Eilwen, Aron, Cadfael, and Mabon, Chieftain of Frostbridge, escape the mine and make it to Rockriver's ruins, where they rest and recuperate. They journey back to Frostbridge and find that Belvan isn't there. During the feasting that ensued upon Mabon's return, Carys, the old crone, tells Eilwen that Belvan went looking for the burial chambers that Eilwen's mother, Arwed, had found 3 years earlier. Mabon rewards Eilwen with a great honor in the form of a battered iron sword called Toothbite that was passed down to him through his great-grandfather. Mabon names Eilwen Swordmistress. For the next 2 days, Mabon trains her one-on-one from sun-up to sundown in the ways of the sword. Eilwen proves a quick learner and masters her concentration to such a level that on the second day of training, she nearly defeats Mabon in their practice fight. On the third day since their return to Frostbridge, Belvan returns from the burial chambers. He bears a heavy dark spear and challenges Mabon's right to rule the settlement. Mabon informs him he'll be fighting his new swordmistress, and after drawing the circle in the snow, a duel ensues between Eilwen, Mabon's champion, and Belvan. The fight is brutal, but short. Eilwen is wounded, but defeats Belvan, mortally wounding him with a thrown dagger. Grasping his spear, a dark shade moves into him, possessing him, and giving him new power. She defeats this new foe, the spirit dissipates on the wind, and Eilwen vows to rid the burial chamber of whatever evil Belvan had uncovered or awakened. As we begin this episode, Eilwen's stats are Edge 2, Heart 1, Iron 1, Shadow 3, Wits 2. Current assets: Archer, initial box; Cutthroat, initial box; Shadow Walk, initial box. Current statuses: Supply 4 out of 5, Spirit 5 out of 5, Health 3 out of 5, Momentum 3 out of 10. Current debilities: None. Current unspent XP 2. And now, on to episode 10 of Queen of Shadows. Eilwen sat by the fireplace, a scrap of leather in her hands, running it along the length of the curved wood of her bow. The leftover scents of bread and cooked meat still hung in the longhouse and mixed with the scents of oil and leather. Darkness had just fallen. The wind had picked up and the flickering firelight flared at times in response to its bite. Orange light from the flames winked off the blades she had just sharpened, her sword and her dagger. Not for the first time, snatches of last night's duel with Belvan played unbidden over and over inside her mind. She reached out a trembling hand and touched Toothbite's hilt. She could still feel the bite of the sword blade on Belvan's neck, felt the warm flecks of his blood that splattered her arms and hands, saw the crimson spray. She closed her eyes. This blade felt right in her hands, and Harold's Belvan had been taken by some foul shade inside of him. She clenched her teeth. No, she didn't regret putting him down. but she also couldn't quite make the sickness go away that hung in her heart. How many more deaths would follow her vow to seek the other half of the cloven crown and become queen? She sighed and looked over at Aron, who sharpened his axe in silence, his face brooding in the firelight. Tomorrow at first light, she would leave for the burial site that Belvan had visited. What would she find there? She wondered as she closed her eyes and again relived the duel. So she's spending time resting and preparing, so this triggers the sojourn move. When you spend time in a community seeking assistance, roll plus heart. If you share a bond, roll plus 1. She rolls a 3 on the action dice and adds plus 1 for her heart and plus 1 for the bond with Frostbridge. Comparing that against a 3 and the 9 on the challenge dice, that is a weak hit. She'll increase her health by 2, now 5 out of 5. Will her father come with her to the burial site? I think that is somewhat likely, and the oracle with a roll of a 9 says yes. Aron, 2, will he also come? I think that's 50-50 chance. Yes, but... They had talked into the night about Belvan and the burial chamber. When she brought up that she meant to go there and cleanse it of evil, her father agreed to take her, but his eyes were troubled. It's a place of sickness, Eilwen. Of death. That's how Mother died, you know. I know, she said quietly. Aron had seemed reticent and frowned slightly as they had talked. He tested the axe blade with a finger and resumed his slow, thoughtful rasping with his whetstone. Once Father left to get some other supplies, Aron spoke to her quietly, for her ears alone. I'll come, he sighed, if that's what you really want me to do. It's not what I want, it's what I need to do. Is it? He looked into her eyes. What of your need to find the other half of the crown? To unite the clans, to fulfill your vow to our mother. I am oath-bound to help you in that quest. It itches in my heart like a worm burrowing deeper. This place, he waved his hand at the settlement, suddenly morose. The Ironlands, all of it. They're lost, forsaken and adrift without a leader, without you. I cannot leave that evil to fester, she said. And I will unite them, brother. I start today by revealing myself to Mabon. His reticence fled, and his eyes lit up with a fervor, and he nodded eagerly, standing. It's time, then? Yes, on the morrow, before we leave for the burial site. The next morning, she, Aron, and her father stood around a rough table in Mabon's home. Outside, the wind howled like cats in a whirlwind, buffeting the longhouse. A fire crackled merrily in the hearth, and oil lamps lit the table and their faces. And Arwed, my mother, said I was the next queen. She finished the tale and pulled out the rent crown from the box and set it on the table. It seemed terribly out of place, this thing of ornate craftsmanship and delicate beauty in such rustic surroundings. The golden crown gleamed in the lamplight, the shorn ruby catching its light, and winked crimson patterns across their faces. Mabon's eyes bulged at the treasure in front of him. Her father sat down hard, nearly missing the chair that creaked under him from his sudden weight. His mouth was agape. Mabon recovered from his shock first. You, queen? He asked. Eilwen, was all her father said, with a groan. Oh, Eilwen. She searched her heart and found that she believed her mother. Yes, she said, with conviction. Technically, I am anyway, but formally no. I need to find the other half. But I need your help, Mabon, she said, leaning towards him, her fists on the table. I need settlements who are loyal, leaders I can count on even now. Will you aid me in this quest? You are a strong leader, a good man. I'll need you and your warriors. Do I have your oath as your queen? So this is going to be a compel move. When you attempt to persuade someone to do something, envision your approach and roll. She's using charm or convince. Charm, pacify, barter, or convince. So she is rolling plus heart. And she gets a +1 bond because of the shared bond with Frostbridge. So I roll on a 3 of the action dice, +1 for heart, +1 for the bond is a 5 against, a 9 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. Mabon ran a finger along the crown and shook his head in disbelief. Lass, if I'm honest, this seems like a fool's quest. You know that, right? But you are persuasive. He tentatively touched the half-ruby. Harold's heart, I do believe you, lass. I'll help you, and I'll give my oath of allegiance. But you must promise to do something in return. It's a small thing. He paused and scratched at the table surface, not meeting her eyes. She waited, wondering what it could be, and raised an eyebrow. And we are wondering too. I am going to use the action and theme oracle from Ironsworn itself, and I roll an 86, locate, and a 91, pride. Locate, pride. When I was a boy, Mabon continued, I saw a traveling menagerie once down in the lowlands. There was this giant cat. His voice grew reverent. Oh, it had such golden fur and a thick mane about its neck and a roar to knock your boots off you. It was the most majestic creature I ever did see, with a tongue as pink as a peach in spring. She saw him actually rub at his eyes. Not that I've seen a peach in spring, mind, but anyway, I'd like you to help me get a kitten, a golden kitten of my own, to have in my old age, you see. Her father tried to cover a laugh, but couldn't. You want... you want a lion cub, Mabon? His laughter spilled out like golden springtime. You do realize they're wild creatures, don't you? It'd probably bite your head off the moment it gets big enough. What do you know about it? Mabon's face reddened. I've made up my mind. So what if it does? It'd be worth it. Aron grinned, and Eilwen gave a slight smile, but then stood up and nodded seriously to Mabon. I'll see it done, Mabon. Good. Good. He scratched at his beard and grinned. Never thought I'd have a night-blinded queen in my own home. It is storming odd, you know that, right, Your Majesty? His grin slipped some, and he looked a little nervous. And I hope you don't hold it against me hammering you down into the snow the other day with your training and all, Your Majesty. Mayhap I shouldn't have done that. She cringed a little at his use of her honorific title, but then let it ride. It was time. Her mother had presumably kept the secret all her life. She smiled at Mabon. Fear not, Mabon. You did your job well. I only wish I had more time to learn from you. They breakfasted together, eating roast venison, drinking warm ale, and talking of mountains, mountain cats, queens, and kingdoms. So this counts as a tick or a milestone in her epic background vow to find the other half of the crown and unite the clans under her rule. An epic vow has 10 boxes like any other vow, but it requires 4 ticks, or 4 milestones, to fill in 1 box completely. So she has 1 out of 40 ticks. I still have a ways to go. A couple of hours later, as they traveled along a snowy valley, mountain peaks rearing up above them, their stone frames cloaked in immutable white, like sentinels of the lost gods, Eilwen thought about events since yesterday. The duel with Belvan, her royal revelation to Mabon. And that very morning she had shown the crown to the entire settlement and made her claim to royalty. No one said anything, and no one bowed or simpered, thank the stars. That suited her just fine, but now people didn't know how to act around her. She could see it in the way they looked at her, or took a different path when she walked past them. In the end, most of them just could never picture that Cadfael's young daughter was truly a lost queen, even with the half-crown in her fist and Mabon's support backing her up. To many of them, she would always be a huntress and nothing more. And she could understand how little Eilwen put it on airs to be a queen would likely sour many a decent relationship. On the whole, her father seemed to take it in stride, although she did catch him giving her long, sorrowful looks now and then, whenever they paused to rest and their eyes met. It also worried her that word was out now. It wouldn't be long until rumors spread across the Ironlands, such tales of a golden circlet, with a ruby worth a score or more of settlements combined, carried by a young woman, would be a beacon to every thief or bandit for leagues around, and would flare ahead of her like wildfire. Maybe she shouldn't have revealed anything so soon. But, well, it had to start sometime, and heralds bite, but she needed trusted warriors at her back, and getting Frostbridge on her side was the first step. At least Aron was in good spirits. "There goes the Queen's Guardian," she had heard someone say, and she had noticed her twin brother walk a little taller, his broad shoulders squared. The hours passed and evening fell upon them, a dark shroud, as Eilwen and her father and brother arrived at the base of the mountain, where father and her mother Arwed had discovered the fateful burial site 3 years ago. "Here we are," Cadfael said, and pointed to a dark horizontal cleft in the rocks some 15 feet above them. A narrow ledge near the rent in the mountainside provided possible access. "The burial chambers are up there." Little flurries of snow had traveled with them the whole of their afternoon journey, and as the flakes swirled and danced, Eilwen stared up at the dark gray and white mass of the mountain that rose up above them, its peak lost in the gray clouds. She followed her father's finger and found the cleft as the winds howled down upon them. She felt their biting cold cut through her leather gloves and wiggled her toes against the cold of the snow. Any tracks left by Belvan and his cronies had long since been swept away by the wind. "How did you find it?" Aron asked above the howling of the wind. "Your mother did. Never did tell me how." Cadfael frowned up at the dark smear against the gray wall of the mountain face. He looked at Eilwen and handed her a coil of thick, sturdy rope. "Eilwen, you're the best climber," he half shouted at her above the wind. "Find us a way up to that ledge." Eilwen nodded, took the rope and wrapped it around her back. Then with gloved fingers she carefully scaled up to the ledge, one numbed handhold and toehold at a time. Once she reached the ledge, she secured the rope to an outcropping of rock and tossed the coil of rope down, watching its end fall into the swirling mass of snow and wind that seemed to rush by like a river. Out of its depths, Cadfael soon appeared and joined her. And then Aron heaved himself up to join them on the ledge, his blonde hair and beard coated in white, arms bulging from his own weight and a good portion of their supplies. Cadfael and Eilwen helped pull Aron up the rest of the way. Then Eilwen pulled in the rope and passed the coil back to her father. Together the three of them stood on the ledge, where a horizontal tear, perhaps 4 feet high and 15 feet wide, led into the darkness beyond. I'm going to use the Ironsworn Delve resource to explore this site. Delve comes with some amazing theme and domain cards that you can use to add focused, descriptive features and dangers to your sites. The theme represents the condition or state of the site and indicates the kinds of denizens and threats you might find there. If you choose Corrupted, You envision this place as tainted by dark magic. A fortified site is occupied and held by enemy forces. The domain represents the physical characteristics of the site, the terrain or architecture you must traverse. A cavern is a dark realm of twisting tunnels and claustrophobic chambers. A shadow fen is a foul marshland. Those are just a couple of examples that the book gives for a theme and domain. I'll be using the corrupted theme and the barrow domain. This is a troublesome delve, otherwise I doubt Belvan could have penetrated deeply into it. Eilwen's goal is to find the source of the corruption and destroy it. I rolled on the Aspect and Focus Oracle in the Delve book. This is like the Action and Theme Oracle in the main Ironsworn rulebook, but it's better suited for delving sites. And I got Ancient and Nature. Eilwen peered into the burial chamber entrance, raising a torch, and caught glimpses of carvings and paintings on one wall depicting foliage she had never seen. Strange wide fronds of green and orange and narrow trees with wide long leaves. Shards of pottery littered the place, and one stone coffin was turned on its side. Skeletal remains scattered across the floor. "We didn't disturb this place," her father said, a sorrowful reverence in his voice. "Belvan and his ilk did this. There's more of the same down this passageway." He led the way, and they came into a slightly larger room, where more pots and bowls had been placed by some ancient hand to go with the dead into the afterlife. Now those pots and bowls littered the space with their clay shards. "This was all untouched 3 years ago," Cadfael said. "Old Carys said Belvan had discovered a new passageway," Eilwen said. "And Belvan mentioned there was some kind of pillar?" "That won't be in these rooms," her father said. "Best look about for that passageway." They split up and examined the room. Eilwen lit a torch and looked across the ground for any clue. She picked up a shard of pottery, feeling its smooth surface. She traced the faded lines of brown paint that flared out in a depiction of branches of one of those thin trees she had seen earlier. Who had spent the time to create the jars and to paint the artwork? Whose remains had been placed there? "Here it is, I think," Aron said, pointing to a large flat rock that only partially covered a man-sized shaft that led downwards into deeper darkness. Eilwen let the shard of pottery fall from her hands back to the ground and joined her father and brother. "Do they see the bodies of Belvan's friends? I think that is unlikely, and we get a no." Eilwen peered into the dark depths. Her torch in one hand, she bore her small pack and her bow on her back, and had her sword and dagger belted at her waist. Cadfael and Aron looked at her. Right, she was the leader now. "Shall we?" she asked, and dropped her torch into the hole. Okay, this is a Delve the Depths move. When you traverse an area within a perilous site and vision your surroundings, ask the oracle if unsure, then consider your approach. You can then choose to navigate the area with haste, stealth or trickery, or with observation, intuition, or expertise. She is going to be using observation, intuition, or expertise, which means we roll plus wits, and I rolled a 1 on the action dice, plus 2 is a 3 for a very poor roll, and a 6 and a 4 on the challenge dice for a miss. Such a great way to start out our little delve here. On a miss, it says to reveal a danger. The Reveal a Danger move in the Delve resource book says when you encounter a risky situation within a site, envision the danger or roll on the following table. I'm going to roll on the table that they have, and I rolled a 49, which says you encounter a hostile denizen. The torch flared as it fell and clattered onto the stone below, emitting a burst of sunset orange sparks. It wasn't a long drop, perhaps the height of 3 tall Ironlanders stacked on top of each other, though a drop from this height, face first, would still wreak havoc, Eilwen reasoned, drawing back and getting the rope from her father's pack. They fastened the rope around the stone coffin and let themselves down. She held up a torch in one hand and then moved down a short passageway of hewn stone. An archway opened up into a large rectangular room where a statue on a dais lay toppled, broken at its ankles. The head and one arm had broken off, but the eyes on the statue felt wrong. At the end of the room, in the gloom, she could just make out another archway. A doorway? Eilwen approached the statue. She saw that strange symbols and runes were edged around the statue's rectangular base. They looked familiar. Eilwen knelt down on the stone floor and rubbed a finger over their iron embossing. It felt greasy, like old soot, and she drew back her hand, rubbing the film between her fingers in distaste. A flicker of movement was all she had. She looked up in horror as dozens of white shapes, the size of maybe huge rats, dropped squirming and biting from above. They are ambushed. We need to enter the fray. When you enter into combat, set the rank of each of your foes. This is going to be a troublesome foe, so 3 progress per harm and inflicts 1 harm. Then we roll to determine who is in control. We are ambushed, so we are rolling based off wits. And I rolled a 5 on the action dice with a +2 for her wits against a 10 and an 8 on the challenge dice for a miss. The creatures squirmed around them, biting with jutting incisors. Eilwen didn't have time to react, and 4 of the foul creatures were on top of her, already biting, burrowing, trying to dig inside of her. The furless monsters had skin white as bone and as wrinkled as an old man 2 days in the grave. Tiny white eyes, like maggots, squirmed and stared back, blind and quivering in their need. Though sightless, they knew where to find their prey. She felt the weight of their small bodies on her, felt their claws through her clothes as they clung to her, felt the incisors cut into her back. She screamed. Aron and her father likewise shouted frantically and flailed about them, throwing the creatures aside only to have more scurry back into the fray. Okay, she suffers -1 harm for taking damage from a troublesome foe. She is now 4 out of 5 health. She screamed and grabbed at the ones on her and managed to pull them off, though they squirmed in her hands and tried to bite her forearms. She threw them onto the ground. They squealed as they hit and rolled, yet they regained their footing and rushed back towards her, anxious for some morsel. In her right hand, she yanked out her knife and slashed at others in front of her, trying to keep them at bay. It was impossible. Their clicking claws on the stone increased in tempo as they swarmed towards her. She frantically tried to leap atop the fallen statue. Any sort of height was better than being swarmed on the ground. So this is a face danger move. When you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action and roll. She is rolling with edge to quickly get them off of her and balance on top of the side of the fallen statue. I rolled a 3 on the action dice, adding 2 for her edge, I get a 5. Comparing that against 9 and a 10 on the challenge dice for yet another miss. -1 supply, now down to 3 out of 5. But she stumbled as she crawled underfoot, and her leap carried her into the statue, and her pack fell off. She quickly clambered up, but some rats began digging into their supplies, and more started to climb up onto the statue near the base. "Our food!" she shouted. "We better finish this or we'll be food," Aron said, smashing one with his axe, splattering it and stomping on another. But he gave a yelp as 2 more started to climb up his legs. Her father was backed into a corner and was trying to stomp on any that drew close, as some crept at the walls towards him. "We cannot stay. Let's go," she shouted. She thought they could probably outrun them if they were quick. "Out that door," she pointed to the far archway. She didn't know if her brother and father had heard her, but she hoped they had. Okay, this is face danger plus edge. A 4 on the action dice, plus 2 for her edge is a 6 against a 2 and an 8 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. That means they can get away, but with a sacrifice. I'll choose -1 supply again. She's now down to 2 out of 5 supply. Her torch still lay where she had dropped it by the statue's base, and was now surrounded by the white, squirming creatures, save for a small envelope around the flame where they shied back from the light and heat and obvious discomfort. Her torch was lost, but maybe she could reach her pack. That had fallen closer. She leaped off the statue and ran for her small pack of supplies, but she wasn't able to get to it in time. It seemed to boil with shapes. The clicking of the rushing of many feet moved towards her again, growing louder. She cursed, left the supplies and her torch, turned, and ran for the far archway. Reaching the doorway, she turned and saw the ground shift and move towards them. Her father and brother raced after her, but there was no door here. All they could do was keep moving. "Keep moving," her father said, echoing her thoughts. He took the lead, his own torch flaring as he leapt down some steps. "Quickly!" Okay, we're going to delve the depths again. This time instead, we will use plus edge, since the fiction says they are moving quickly and with haste. I don't have a record of what I rolled before, but I did get a weak hit, so we mark progress. Progress is now 3 out of 10. On a weak hit, roll on the following table according to your stat. So we are rolling with edge. I got something between a 1 and a 45 because the weak hit result says mark progress and reveal a danger. And on reveal a danger, I rolled the result of you face a perplexing mystery or tough choice. They darted down a flight of crumbling steps, down another short passageway, and then into an octagonal room with a slab of rock jutting out from each of the 8 sides into the room. On each slab a coffin lay overturned, the lid off. Dust had spilled out of each one into small gray piles on the floor. They listened, but didn't hear or see any sounds of pursuit. Aron approached one of the coffins and nudged his boot against one of the small piles of dust. Where did it go? They could hear a dripping of water down a corridor. "What?" Ellen asked, distracted, her eyes scanning the darkness. "The bones. The dead," Aron said again. Equipment had also spilled out, armor, swords, helms, all of it cankered with time beyond use, the metal flaking away at a touch, adding red piles of dust to the gray. "More bone walkers?" her father asked, his eyes wide, darting all around. "No," Eilwen said. "Look." Dust covered the ground around the coffins, but she couldn't see any footprints. The hackles on the back of her neck rose up. They didn't see any footprints enter this room either, other than their own. Continuing through this room, another doorway opened up, and the passage continued still down. But maybe we missed a branching corridor in our flight down. Let's backtrack and see if we can see Belvan's prints. That should lead us where we need to go. Just don't go too far back. We don't want to meet those crawlers again, Aron said. Okay, this is Delve the Depths again. This time they're trying to keep an eye out for a branching passageway that they might have missed, so this is rolling with wits. She rolls a 6 on the action dice, plus 2 for an 8, against 3 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a strong hit, finally. Progress is now 6 out of 10 on this delve. They moved down another passageway, lined with stone statues cowled and ominous with cracks running through them, some limbs having fallen off from time and gravity. Lichen grew on some. One statue near the door was broken at the waist. They saw boot prints around in the dust and a shattered wooden door. "They must have gone this way," Eilwen said. "Belvan must have used the statue to break the door down." She pressed onward and through the shattered door, but then stopped as a passageway slanted sharply down and her feet slipped in the dust. She moved in a crouch and pulled off her bow and fitted an arrow. "Let us move carefully and quietly. Those crawlers, rats, whatever they are, aren't after us, but," she said in a whisper, "I don't like this." This is a Delve the Depths with Shadow, because they are moving quietly and stealthily. And she gets a 2 on the action dice, plus 3 for her Shadow for a 5, against a 10 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So we mark progress and reveal a danger. They moved down the slanted route and made it to a heavy stone door. More runes covered the doorpost, and an angular-looking eye carved into the lintel stared wordlessly down at her. "Do they see any bodies of Belvan's cronies?" 50-50 chance is a no. "This must be it," Eilwen said, studying the door. "How does it open? Sure looks heavy," Aron said. "I don't know, but..." He pressed on the door. They heard a rapidly increasing tempo of a clicking sound, and behind them saw puffs of air moving aside cobwebs. "Down!" she shouted, dropping her bow and arrow, and throwing herself down. "It's a trap," Admiral Akbar shouts. Okay, I'm channeling my inner Indiana Jones. Cue the music. Dun, 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 dun. And face danger plus edge. I get a 5 on the action dice, plus 2 for her edge is a 7 total against a 2 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. Wicked-looking spears shot out. She slammed to the ground and one lanced right over her, clattering into the wall above her, shearing through her sleeve, but barely missing her skin. Aron took one in his shield, the shaft shattering a wooden panel, a mere finger's width from his face. Father dropped quickly too, and other than bruises was unharmed. Everyone all right?" Cadfael called out. Eilwen knelt and studied the spears, and sniffed. A stale, telltale, familiar scent tingled in her nostrils. She stiffened and backed up. Don't touch the points. Harold's a knight. They've poisoned the spears with silverweed." She suddenly felt the oppressiveness of it all. The cavern crawlers, the strangeness of the missing bodies, Belvan's transformation and madness, the ruins of the green grip, her mother and the iron discs, now silverweed poison. Okay, she's going to lose -1 spirit. This is from the weak hit earlier, and her spirit is now 4 out of 5, and she now needs to make the Endure Stress move. Endure Stress. When you face mental shock or despair, suffer - spirit equal to your foe's rank or as appropriate to the situation. She's just losing 1 spirit at the moment. So now we roll plus spirit or heart, whichever is higher, to see if she can endure this stress. I rolled a 5 on the action dice, plus 4 for her current spirit is a 9 against a 6 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. On a strong hit, I can choose to shake it off, or I can choose to embrace the darkness. I will choose to embrace the darkness and increase my momentum by 1. Momentum is now 4 out of 10. "Don't touch the door," her father said, and glowered at Aron. Eilwen studied the runes, hoping for a way beyond the stone door. Can she read the runes? I think that's somewhat likely. I get a no and. "What do they say?" Aron asked. "I don't know," Eilwen said. "But I thought you could read these runes." I can read some runes apparently, but obviously not all. I'm no book-learned sage, Aron. Aron looked at her dubiously. What about the... Quiet, and let me think. Okay, this is Delve the Depths again, and I'm going to use Wits again. Get a 5 on the action dice plus 2 for the Wits for a 7, against a 2 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. The runes were strange, angular, yes, but they felt greasy and wrong. But she noticed something else. Blood. Dried blood, but relatively fresh, perhaps a few days old, coated 2 of the runes. Twin rectangular runes. She moved the torch closer and studied them. The material behind the iron runes bore a very faint line, as if something could move. Be ready, she said, and pressed the runes. Another clicking sound made them jump, and Aron raised his shield, but the door swung open. Progress is now 10 out of 10. Oh yeah. Okay, I am going to do the locate your objective move. This is a progress move. When your exploration of a site comes to an end, roll the challenge dice and compare to your progress. Momentum is ignored on this roll. Okay, so we are comparing our 10 boxes against the 2 challenge dice. And I rolled 2 10s? This is a miss. What are the chances of that? A miss and a twist on a match of double 10s. From the rulebook, it says, on a miss, your objective falls out of reach. You have been misled about the nature of your objective, or you discover that this site holds unexpected depths. If you continue your exploration, clear all but 1 field progress and raise the site's rank by 1, if not already epic. I have no desire to keep exploring this place, so I'm going to say that this is the end of the depths, but... 2 10s with a match. My goodness. They passed through the stone doorway into a large circular room. Inside, 8 skeletons lay face down, as if in obeisance to a short and stout octagonal stand, or short pillar made of black iron. The dais also formed an octagonal shape, and 8 steps led up toward the iron stand. They carefully climbed to the stand, weapons at the ready. There, on the octagon stand, was a single inset groove for an octagonal shape. A shape like an iron ring. I don't get it, Aron said. Isn't there something here or someone, some evil to destroy? Not every evil is so visible, son, their father said. But there must be something, Aron frowned. Something was on this pedestal, Eilwen mused, pursing her lips and tracing the notched groove with her finger, feeling the 8 hard edges in the iron pillar. Belvan must have taken it. Something small, about this size. They searched the rest of the room and found nothing else save in one corner. There they found 2 relatively fresh bodies moldering. Their flesh had largely been stripped by cavern crawlers. They both had puncture wounds in their hearts. Their mouths were open, as if in a silent scream. It's Luke and Sawel, Father grimaced, crouching nearby. No valuables on them. Looks like they probably had a fight over the ring, and Belvan did them in. The slimy rat. He... Father, was Belvan wearing an iron pendant or ring in the shape of that octagon? I don't know. It wasn't on the burial detail. But she wasn't listening. A sudden horrific thought had hit her. What if the ring itself had stored the evil spirit? There were 8 sets of bones. Could that mean 8 spirits? She shuddered at the thought. What if someone else had the ring and... "The light save us," she said. "We have to get back to Frostbridge now." And she ran for the exit. This is the escape the depths move. When you flee or withdraw from a site, consider the situation and your approach. She is finding the fastest way out, rolling plus edge. She gets a 5 on the action dice, plus 2 for her edge is 7, against a 7, and a 5 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. On a weak hit, you find your way out, but this place exacts its price. Choose one. I choose you are delayed, and it costs you. They ran out, down the corridor where the trap was, up the slanted passageway, up, and past the room with the cavern crawlers, up the passageway, and back to where their rope dangled invitingly. They climbed up, and she quickly reeled in her rope, coiling it and adding it to her pack. They moved to just inside the cleft in the mountain's wall. It was fully dark now, and without, she was met by a furious blizzard that blasted the landscape in screaming howls of white claws of ice. The weather in the Veiled Mountains was a temperamental and fickle thing. She cursed and paced just within the exit, her torch held high, equipment on her back, ready to go. She stepped outside for an instant and felt the fury of the storm and the flaying ice as the powerful winds lashed about her. She came back in and sat down hard on the edge of the coffin. "We can't go, Eilwen," Father said, putting a hand on her shoulder. "That's a killing blizzard. If we go out there in the dark, we'll get lost, freeze to death." "I know," she said, and her foot began tapping impatiently. "But what if Frostbridge is in danger because of the—" "Hush, daughter," her father smiled and sat down next to her. "Frostbridge is made up of strong folk. They still got Mabon." "And I have his sword. I shouldn't have taken it. I should—" "He gave it to you. It's yours now. You are his swordmistress. He has other weapons, spear and axe. Under his skill and leadership, they can weather a lot." "Can they weather 7 possessions of ancient spirits of darkness from a bygone age?" she asked in a breathless whisper. Belvan had been the first. Was it possible that there were 7 more? It was only a hunch, but the way her gut squirmed within her, she felt it was true. "Let us trust and hope," her father said. "Come on." He stood up. "The good news is we have good shelter for a safe camp." He led the way back inside to the larger room, away from the opening to the ravening storm outside. There, the outside howl was much diminished. There, amid the shattered bowls and pots, they made camp after they first moved the flat stone securely across the opening in the floor. "There," Cadfael said. "That should prevent the creatures below from coming up to disturb our rest." They ate from their meager supplies and let their torchlight run out. Okay, this is a make camp move. When you rest and recover for several hours in the wild, roll plus supply. She rolls a 5 on the action dice, plus 2 for their current supply is a 7, against a 2 and a 3 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. She takes a recuperate and adds plus 1 to her health, getting that back up to 5 out of 5, and focus, plus 1 momentum, now 5 out of 10. They rested and tended their wounds and then focused on the return trek back to Frostbridge. They would need to move in haste. "I should be there with Mabon." She slid her dagger in and out of her sheath, staring up into the darkness. Again and again and again, until Aron threatened to take it away. "Go to sleep, sister," he said with a groan, turning over on his bedroll. "There's nothing you or we can do." She tried to sleep. Not an easy task when worry kept such companions as the muted howl of the dark wind just down the corridor and the whispered clicking sounds as of many clawed feet beneath her itched in her mind. In the pitch dark, behind closed eyelids, she imagined a horde of maggot-white cavern crawlers burrowing through the stone to consume them all in the darkness. Heralds beneath, she thought, but they shouldn't have come here. Eventually, tiredness won out, and she fell into an uneasy sleep. Thank you for joining us, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed what you experienced. If you would like to support Roll, Ponder, and Play, you can do so by joining my Patreon at patreon.com/Roll, Ponder, and Play. There you can also find transcripts, show notes, and other projects I'm involved in. If you would like to reach out to me, you can find me on Patreon or on Discord at Roll, Ponder, and Play, or by email at rollponderandplay@gmail.com. Until we meet again, may your own dice rolls ever bring you success.